Dad, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much.
This is official.
Excited to be here representing the Andromeda brand.
My dad is my biggest fan, you guys. Genuinely, which is awesome. I want to start with, because I think we can just go on a tangent. I don't think we need to, dive into the whole structure of everything. I think that you've lived so much life. You have so many stories. But I want to start with where you're at lately and, some of the growth that you've had lately, some of the obstacles you've faced lately. So just kind of feel free to dive into that and tell me about how things have been for you business-wise, personally. Let's dive in.
Well, I'm coming out of a almost 2-year run of kind of suffering a slowed down business. I'm the audience doesn't know that I own a roofing business, and we respond to hailstorms in Dallas-Fort Worth, and we just haven't had a ton of those in the last couple of years. We've had some here and there, and I'm fortunate enough that I've been in business for since 2001, and so I've gotten some traffic, and it's like every other business. You have to spend money to make money. It takes money to market your business and to buy leads and so on. And unfortunately, in the roofing business, there are a lot of people offering their marketing services that are totally ineffective. And I have spent thousands of dollars over the last couple of years trying to get business in the door. And often I had one case early last year where I spent close to $8,000 and I got 2 leads and 22 calls from roofers looking for work. So this all to say what it did to me kind of personally, and what I allowed it to do to me is that it's my mindset started eroding, and I found myself being depressed, and that led to my energy level going down, and it led to me not taking as good care of myself, stress going up, and gaining weight. And I used to love to go to the gym, and I stopped going to the gym, and eating junk food and all of those kinds of things. And so anyway, it just painted a story of not enough business, financial troubles, self-esteem sinking because it was based on what I was seeing as a lack of performance kind of thing. And I felt like everything I was doing wasn't working,
Tell me about the shift for you, because I've noticed, obviously being your son, so I know you very well. So I've noticed, I've seen you go through those waves of you'll go through a motivational phase or something, but honestly, something feels different this time around. I don't know what it is, but I think the energy's different, and I can just see it in your actions. Like I said, it's less, you're doing less of hey, this is what I'm going to do, and you're just doing it. Yeah. And you just lost, 20 pounds?
20 pounds.
Just lost 20 pounds in 2 months?
2 months.
2 months?
Yep.
So I'm seeing it happen in real time, which is really cool and really inspiring for me. Yeah, so I'm curious, what do you think the shift for you was recently that just to change that energy? Well,
one of the basic things that I've always had is this: I just don't quit. I don't quit. I remember when I was 19 years old and participating in a bike-a-thon, raising money for muscular dystrophy or whatever, and I developed leg cramps the last 5 miles of my bike ride.
How many miles total was the?
I rode 70 miles that day.
Where was it?
It was in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Okay, yeah.
So I was doing, and it was very hot, and I was dehydrated, and so I started developing cramps, and so bad that I couldn't pedal. What I did is I would pedal with one leg, and while I let the other leg stop cramping, and then I did the last 5 miles that way, and but that was I don't know if that's not a character trait that I actively tried to create in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was what just God gave me, this don't quit thing. And sometimes I've not quit things I should have quit,
Yeah.
But so that started, and I started seeing myself as being a quitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first thing, was like being really honest with myself and saying, are you doing? You're not happy with anything right now.
Right.
You're miserable to everybody. You feel lousy physically and mentally and emotionally. You got nothing going for you spiritually, because my faith had waned a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, because I had these my whole life has been around positive thinking and trying to, personal development and all of that. It was easier for me to kind of see that I had laid those things down. It had become obvious.
Right.
And once I took kind of personal responsibility for that, and like Jocko Willink talks about extreme ownership, which means that no matter what's going wrong, he would say, well, this is going wrong. He'd say, good. That's
Yeah.
Jocko Willink. I love that. Good. But the other key point that he made, and I read his books and watch his podcasts and so on, is that idea that because you own everything that's happening, you can impact everything around you.
Right.
And so there was and there's no blaming anyone else for whatever your issue is. It doesn't matter if there's no hailstorm. Well, then good. Go figure out another way. If you want to be a contractor, go figure out another way, And so my mind started opening up to things. And then I just started realizing that the other thing or concept that I understood from before is that I've got to get control of my own self.
Mm-hmm.
And, that means getting control of my body,
Yeah.
I mean, part of my deal was, I turned 63,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't like part of that because I've always felt younger than I am, and I feel like I look younger.
Which everybody watching doesn't believe that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that I'm 63.
They're like, no, you're not.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
But I was feeling it, and I was afraid of it, and because when you start to reach my age, you start thinking that it's easy to look back 10 years, and go, 10 years wasn't that long ago. Yeah. So 10 years from now, I'm going to be 73. And that, and it's funny, what's funny when you're 20, 40 sounds old, when you're,
but partially like I share your perspective, I think, in a lot of ways, as far as like the awareness of how young I really am.
Yeah.
I think because of you, in a lot of ways, you've kind of instilled in me a lot of that mindset. One of my, like, I quote you all the time in saying, like, you're like, you could screw around for the next 10 years and still start over, like still be young to start over. And that's one of the reasons I think you inspire me so much, is because, like, I really do agree with you and believe in that, like, that you really don't quit, you know, to see you like continue. I know firsthand, like, your struggles. I've seen all of them, you know, and not all of them, even all of them, but like all of the ones that a son can see.
You've seen the most painful ones.
I've seen a lot of the painful ones.
Yeah.
And I think what really inspires me so much is that sort of like, for you to go through all these phases and me watching you go through all that and still find like new purpose and new meaning and new like ambition, it tells me, 'cause I go through such heavy phases and lows myself where I'm like, what am I even doing, like, with music and all this stuff, and like ready to give up completely. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's inspiring that you're such a force of optimism and like continuing on. Well,
thank you for saying that, for sure. So just kind of, going to that transition point, it was like, okay, so I've decided quitting is not an option, whether it be, quitting to trying to find the answer to business, trying to get my body back to where it needs to be, or even just living, you can't quit, So then that leaves you with, well, what am I going to do now? And a lot of the question answering or asking of what am I going to do now, I was not finding the answers.
Yeah.
And all I knew is that I kept doing the same things over and over again, which of course is the definition of an insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
We all heard that cliche. Um, so I really started to look at, well, what can I really focus on and change? And I remember that Dwayne Johnson, who shares my same birthday, he's exactly 10 years younger than me, had reached a point where he only had $7 in his wallet. He got fired from the Canadian Football League. We're talking about The Rock, okay? Yep. And he went home to Hawaii and went home to his mom's house to find a foreclosure notice on the door, and they had been locked out. And so we all know who he is today, but what got him to where he is today is when he had those $7 in his wallet and he was so depressed. He literally cried, didn't know what he was going to do, had no idea what he was going to do. The only thing he knew to do was to go work out, and to focus on getting his body where it needed to go, and then relying on the family business, which was wrestling,
Yeah.
And that led to where he is today. Dwayne Johnson is probably arguably a billionaire, and his name of his production company is $7, because that is the homage to the $7 he had in his wallet.
I'm curious, in your life, sorry to cut you off, but on that note, like, what is your $7 moment? Do you have, I mean, I'm sure over the course, like, I know you've been through different phases of, like, seeing a lot of success and then kind of coming back down and then coming back up. So, like, I'm sure maybe there's multiple. For me, there's multiple moments too. But is there one that sticks out in particular for you?
Yes, because it was when your mom and I went through our divorce. Mm-hmm. The first time we went through our divorce, when I ended up in that little apartment where I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have a job because your mom had taken over the roofing company.
Where was that apartment, by the way?
That was off Cooks Lane. Over there.
So it was in Arlington.
In Arlington, off of I-30 and Cooks Lane.
Yep.
And it was just like this, not such a great area of town. It was a 1-bedroom apartment that I had no furniture. Had like an old couch or something.
Yeah.
And literally had no vehicle, no job, no. There was no places to even walk to work.
I just remember you making Krabby Patties.
Yep, maybe. And then when you guys would come stay with me, we'd all crowd in that 1 bedroom and sleep on the floor together.
You know what's so funny though? Like, what's wild about that experience, like for me in my memory, is like I remember loving that every time going to your apartment.
Well, one of the things that was cool is, you guys would go and skateboard out in front of the apartment complex. Yeah. And I'd sit out there with you mainly because I, it just wasn't a safe neighborhood.
Yeah. No, it's fond memories for me. Honestly, like I'm glad we're talking about it because I'm like, I don't take enough time to reflect back on that time because I think thinking of how much you were probably struggling internally, but being a amazing dad. Yeah. Like I got to give you the creds for during that time, like that I really felt supported by you. I was making YouTube videos and stuff, of the skateboarding and all of that stuff.
But what was interesting about that, Har, is that was the tail end of me being a lot of not being present as a dad.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, it was, one of the things I like to say a lot is that no consequence goes unpaid. Wow. And I was definitely paying the consequences for all of the bad choices that I had made during my marriage to your mom. Mm-hmm. That I took my focus off the business to the point that your mom felt in order to keep the security of the family that she needed to be responsible and run Maverick Roofing and Contracting. Mm-hmm. So she took over the accounts and did all of, because I was so messed up in terms of where my head was, where my focus was, that was the awakening time. And one of the things that I told you about Dwayne Johnson, that was going to actually connect to this story, is that one of the things that I learned, I started going to men's groups at the church that was nearby. And really that helped me a lot. It helped me focus on being a present dad, really understanding my definition of happiness had been problematic for me and for my family, in my marriage. And
what was your definition of happiness at that time?
well, at that time it was find anything I could to get out of my marriage ultimately, and it was seeking the attention of other women, and not necessarily on a physical level, but definitely because I'm a verbal person and I was a social media person, so it was inappropriate communications with other people, an emotional affair that was significant, things that are not conducive to being successful in a marriage, or because I was so busy focusing on those things, I wasn't focusing on business at all.
Right.
So, if your personal life is a train wreck, you lose everything. You lose your wife, you lose your kids because now you can't be with them.
Were you working a day job or anything during that time, or what did you do?
I actually was getting help from the church, and
Okay.
then because I still, prior to that point, I'd been running my roofing company.
Right.
So, but as often happens in these kind of stories, your mom had access to the bank account, and so she immediately shut off my access to that, and she took over the business.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons she was able to do that was that when we had started our business 11 years before, I was out of state wrapping up a roofing company's operations that I had worked for, and I asked your mom to get the DBA for our business. So she went in; it was in her name. So because even though she didn't even run, she had never run the roofing company before, but your mom is fantastic at business, and she made it work.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, and fairly quickly, I rolled into helping her.
Yeah.
Because, I knew everything about roofing, and I knew the crews, and I know who to call and all that. And so at that point, we began to be aligned on, okay, we got to clean up, make the business work because we have kids to support.
Right. Yeah.
And whether or not we're going to stay married, or which we weren't, we did the right thing, And then later on, when your mom and I remarried for a period of time, ultimately led to an amicable divorce the second time. But your mom signed the business over to me, and she said, it's your business, and I'm gonna go start my own Christmas light business, and she did fantastic.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is that it was my $7 moment because for me, I didn't have a car. The landlady of the apartment complex actually loaned me her car, which I went and picked you up and your brothers with.
What car was it?
It was an old brown 2-door crappy.
I'm trying to remember if I can remember.
The car wouldn't even
was.
pass inspection. It was really bad. But she had let me borrow it so I could. But by this time I had begun to help your mom again with the roofing thing, and so I didn't really have to go get a job.
Yeah.
But if somebody gave me an opportunity to go make money, I would go do it, and they would pick me up or whatever.
Right.
But again, it was a situation where I really didn't know what to do. So sometimes the only thing I knew to go do was just to do the dishes in the sink.
Yeah.
And that little thing would make me feel like, okay, I accomplished something. You know. And you just start stacking wins, and when your wins are all tiny, you go for any tiny win that you can get.
Yeah.
So, but that was that was the rock bottom for me. I never want to be in this position again. I'm an entrepreneur in that, I've started the roofing company and I've started a marketing business. I've tried different online things. And like a lot of people that are entrepreneurial, you have things that don't work out, and
where do you feel like the entrepreneur spirit comes from for you? Because Granny was working in, not as a lawyer, but in law offices, right? She was paralegal. Mm-hmm. That's the word I was looking for. So, and then, and what did Papa Frank do? I don't know what he was doing at the time.
Well, he was originally a fireman. And then he went to work for Overhead Door
Yeah.
installing, he installed garage doors and sold garage doors everywhere. Right. And then he retired from that, and then he ultimately had his own small company.
But for the most part, like they weren't. Well, and I know Papa wasn't really.
No one was entrepreneurial
because he came later on.
Yeah.
So like, and then what about your dad? What was he doing?
Well,
for work?
my biological father worked in corporate America his entire career. He started in Walgreens as a clerk, and he worked his way, got promoted every year. Ultimately, was managing stores and then regions. And then he went to work for a large tobacco company, and he became a senior vice president of that.
And that's the one that he tried to get you to work at? Is that right?
Well, he actually went to work for his competitor. He got me a job with his competitor, which that's an interesting.
But jumping back, the main thing, like, so generally there wasn't like the people that were raising you or like having that they were not entrepreneurial.
Fact,
So where do you feel like that comes from?
Well, I think that, I grew up in the 80s. I graduated from high school in 1980. And the 80s was a period of time when entrepreneurialism became the rock star thing. Donald Trump, back then was the billionaire real estate guy. He was very brash and exciting and all of that, regardless of your politics now.
Yeah.
But he was cool back then. He was cool all the way up to The Apprentice,
Right.
And I think that also when I was 19, I was exposed to multi-level marketing because I had a very outgoing personality.
Yeah.
And so I would get approached by a lot of people who wanted me to be in Amway or what, And so that opened me up to because I was also very interested in learning things. And so they always had books and tapes and all those, and I started reading, just consuming a lot of things about entrepreneurialism and business and I even later reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, the idea that the most successful people in the world either own a business or they buy and sell real estate or
they work for themselves.
They work for themselves. And also, my very first thing I ever did was I cut lawns at age 11. And I made money, and I got all the lawn jobs myself. And I would spend, and then after that, I became a paper boy, which was also a self-employed thing. And that allowed me to go to an ice cream shop anytime I wanted to because I had the money, and I liked the idea that I could do what I wanted to do. And also, I never wanted to be limited. Like, one of the things about getting a job is they tell you you're going to make, $15 an hour.
Yeah, there's a max income.
Right. And, you might get promoted, but there isn't a lot of slots open. So now you're going to have to jump to some other company and hope for the best. And I just wanted the freedom that came with it, And I spent my time in corporate America too. I worked for Progressive Insurance and, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
So, I think the bottom line for me is that, I saw it as a freedom thing. And I will tell you that I made the mistake for a lot of these years thinking that freedom equates to I can decide when I don't want to work.
Right.
Because what you discover,
there's a price to freedom. For sure.
What you discover is that entrepreneurs work more than anyone else.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's important to find what you're really passionate about.
Yes.
And what you really enjoy doing.
What would you do for free? Basically, almost.
Yeah. So. But anyway,
I want to shift gears too and talk about music as well, because obviously you've had a huge influence on. It's easy for me to point. Like for me, it's easy to point to my parents and be like, well, I get the entrepreneurial musician, like all those things from my parents.
Yeah.
So I'm curious too, your influences when it came to music as well. I know you've mentioned obviously like. Didn't you say, is it your dad who played?
My stepdad.
Your stepdad.
Yeah.
That's right. Who played
But
trumpet?
before,
Or
well,
what did he
trombone.
play? Trombone.
Yeah,
Right.
and a singer too.
Yeah.
Fantastic singer. Prior to all that, though, my Granny's dad, wrote music for radio shows.
Yeah.
And in New York.
This is Miguel?
Yeah.
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 Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. That's
And,
awesome.
And I have some of his original, melody lines that he wrote out on staff paper.
That's legendary.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so, there. And then growing up, my mom always had a real appreciation for music as a listener.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was she into?
Johnny Mathis.
Who's that? I don't know.
Johnny Mathis. He actually just retired. He's like 88. He's older than dirt now. But he recorded one of his hits was a song called "Chances Are." Chances are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of a sound.
Grandmother music.
Yeah. Grandmother music.
I love that though.
Yeah. So, but probably the most impactful thing was. When I was 11, my mom got remarried. She divorced my dad after 9 years of marriage, and then she was a single parent for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I was 7 when my parents divorced. But my mom got remarried to my stepdad, and he was, and still is, he's still with us, but he was extremely accomplished in everything that he did. Mm-hmm. He was, an art teacher.
This is Grandpa Dick.
This is Grandpa Dick.
Okay.
Yeah. Great art teacher. Ended up working for NASA.
Yeah.
Ended up filming surgeries and developing programs to teach surgeons how to do hip and knee replacement.
What did he do at NASA?
He was responsible for all of the programs to help the public understand what NASA was doing, and so he wrote and developed, and he helped design where the cameras were placed on the pad.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And then he also traveled around the country putting on seminars and discussing what the space program was doing, and it was part of the space program's plan to keep funding the space program.
Yeah.
Because this was during the Apollo space program. We had gone to the moon in 1969 the first time, and so through the 70s when my dad was there, he was about trying to keep the program going. Because the interest, once we had gone to the moon, 3 or 4 or 5 times, it was kind of like, why are we still going to the moon?
Right.
The public was losing interest in it because it was so expensive.
Yeah. And so he played a role. He was great at everything.
Yeah. So that was the deal is that, I was a guy who needed a father figure, and so I got one in Grandpa Dick. He was a great stepfather from the standpoint of being responsible and guiding us and being there. And then he was super example of work ethic and so on. But the other thing that he did was he was a great musician and a singer, and he had played with Frank Sinatra. Who been one of the biggest stars in the world, and
which is legendary lore, by the way.
Yeah. And so and he sang another old time star was Andy Williams, who he sounded just like him when he sang. So I would go and watch him play. He played in a band in Tulsa. So we would drive like an hour or so to Tulsa, and he'd play, and I got to sit there as a kid and watch my dad playing with this band, and that was cool. And that led to me wanting to play an instrument.
Right.
And because, I had already fooled around with the guitar. My very first instrument was the recorder, like a lot of kids. But I took it kind of seriously. And then I would sit with a guitar and play one string and improvise to Johnny Cash albums.
Yeah.
And
so that would just be by ear.
By ear.
Did you always have an ear for music? Like you could just kind of find it?
Yes.
That's cool.
And that actually led, I became a trombone player because of my dad, and he played, I still have the horn that he bought me in 7th grade. Wow. Because it's a professional level horn, and I played it throughout I was a professional trombone player.
Yeah.
I played that, still to this day, I still play that horn. And he played every horn in the store, and he picked that one for me, and it was a really nice horn.
That's awesome.
And but yeah, I had an ear for music, and in fact, I became first chair trombone player, early in my high school career. I was in the jazz ensemble.
Yeah.
They would pick me to go out in front of the marching band and play solos over the top of the band,
Yes.
because, I wanted to play music my way. So like I wouldn't be disciplined to stay on the music, and the band director would get frustrated with me. And one day he finally said, "You know what? Just play what you hear, because it sounds better than what's written anyway." I'll never forget that.
That's a huge compliment, though.
It
That's
was,
amazing.
but he should never have said that.
Right? Yeah.
You know.
That's hilarious.
But
yeah, he set you free.
Yeah.
By doing that.
So I was always, I heard music in my head. I composed music a lot.
Were you a lyricist ever? Like, were you writing when you were younger too?
It was hard. I'm kind of a lyricist, like Billy Joel is a lyricist. Not to imply that I'm any near as good as Billy Joel, but Billy Joel, like Stevie Wonder says, he writes a song every day.
Right.
And he, Billy actually said, "Yeah, but are they good?" Billy Joel writes 20 songs. And while he was in the height of his writing, he'll write 20 songs and for 3 years not write anything.
Yeah.
I was that way. I probably wrote, 8 to 10 songs, period.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough because I co-wrote a song with your mom.
Right.
That actually got us nominated for 2 Grammys.
Grammy nominated, yeah. Which is also legendary lore.
But I got there because of your mom's talent.
Yeah, but still, it's just weird. It's incredibly weird and awesome. Like, weird for me to be like, oh, yeah, my parents have been Grammy nominated.
Yeah,
it's wild.
It is wild, but that and $5 now at Starbucks get you a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But I kind of lost track.
So I was talking about, you being a lyricist. I'm curious too, also, like, if there is a particular song that you wrote that, like, is there one that speaks the most to you? Like,
that I
out
wrote?
of everything you've written? Yeah. What is the most personal piece that you've written?
Well, there's 2 songs that really come to mind. The first song is called "Endless Frustration," and I wrote it about my stepdad.
Wow.
And he was always working on cars, and he was a kind of a stoic individual, and that he didn't really emotionally connect with you. And that was something that I'm a very emotional, empathetic, in touch with that kind of more feminine energy kind of person, and he was more of a man's man about things. He had been a bodybuilder before bodybuilding was, the rage. He knew everything about cars, and I wanted to be a part of that, but he was one of those guys that wanted to do it all himself and not really include you, And so I always wanted to connect with him, because I always wanted a dad that I could really feel the connection with, you know? And so, like one of the lyrics of the song, there's a man I know looks for heaven in a 327. Yeah, she's great, but her heart's made of steel. And that was a metaphor about his using his Corvette.
He's spending more time on his car.
Yeah, it was all about his car. So many years of intense frustration, idle conversation with no sensation. That was one of my lyrics that I wrote, you know. And it was a great song, I thought. But it was so personal and so deeply, like almost too much going on lyrically. It was never going to be a pop song, you know.
Yeah, but I love it from a lyrical standpoint.
Yeah,
Yep. And it's awesome.
Yeah, and then I wrote another song for a woman that I was with that I did not treat well.
I think I know this one.
Yeah, and I wrote the song as a very heartfelt, very personal apology and recognition that I had definitely overstepped boundaries within the relationship.
It was a flower,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It
What
was
was it, a rose?
Rose, yeah.
Yeah.
Treated her like a secondhand rose.
Secondhand
That
rose.
was one of the things.
That's what
yeah.
it was. I borrowed your lyric
Yeah.
in one
did
of
you?
my songs.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And then and it was you know during that relationship, I had anger management issues. I had a lot. I was very, very immature. I was, when I was with her, I was, 23 years old. I was living with her,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately married her, and we were together until I was 30,
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, it was one of those things where a fight went too far, behaviors on my part went too far,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Did you ever show her the song?
yes, I sang it for her.
Oh wow.
And
How'd she respond?
she did appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
And it actually
Was that like a closure moment for you guys?
yeah,
And
it
y'all
was.
kind of moved on after
it
that?
was
Yeah.
about that situation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I ultimately sent it off to a vanity press as a poem.
Right.
And I don't know, I can't find it anywhere in that book because that book is not on the internet.
I have it.
You have the book?
Have it. I have the poem.
You have the poem?
I have the poem. I
I
think.
would love to see it.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Okay.
Yeah, after this I will find
Because
it.
I've
I'll
told
bring
Jenny
it out
about
for
it, and I've never.
you. Yep. It's amazing. I know I have it somewhere in my stuff because Mom gave me an old folder.
Yeah.
Somewhere it got lost in things and so it somehow ended up in my hands and
it was so deep.
Yeah.
It was really one of the best lyrics that I ever wrote. But
I remember reading it and
Yeah.
thinking like this is insane. Like it was a crazy experience for me because like I said, we have such a deep connection through music.
Yeah.
You and I.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing this like vicarious feeling of like, I almost could really put myself in your mind in that time,
Right.
like reading it. And I related to it at the time I was reading it because I had, gone through my kind of phase of
If not
treating
exactly the
my
same.
ex-girlfriend not very well
Yeah.
and not being proud of it. And I
Yeah.
think that, so the lyrics were resonating even more at the time when I discovered
That's
it and read
beautiful.
it, which is awesome.
I do
So,
love hearing that.
Yeah.
I wrote another song called "Old Man." A young man newly married thought himself a dream. He'd love her every day more than the day before, and their love would only grow.
Mm.
And then it was one of those songs where it changes into the old man,
Yeah.
where he realizes that he did the thing that he wanted to do, that he loved her more and more every day, more than the day before, and their love it grew and grew.
Yeah.
That was.
I love
but
that.
that was it was a sweet song, kind of a corny, song. And then I wrote another song called "Wounded Souls." Where do wounded souls go?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to find that one to remember the lyrics,
Yeah.
but that was another kind of a cool. I was always dealing with angst or depression or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, can we take a restroom?
Yeah,
break?
let's pause.
I
For
gotta
sure.
pee.
This is a great episode though already. This is awesome. You're good. I think I'll leave it rolling and I'll pick it up. I'll cut it later. Hello, this is just for when I come back to cut this part out. Okay. Are we still rolling here? We are. Nice. I'm going to do the same.
okay, man.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we're working tomorrow.
What's that?
I don't know if we're working tomorrow. Because he said he's going to a doctor tomorrow, so I'm like, okay. And I'm gonna try to get some interviews tomorrow. If he's taking the day off.
That'd be cool.
Still waiting for him Cargo to respond.
I got one more song I can tell you about. Whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
So the other song I wrote could have been my Billy Joel moment. It was a song called "How Many Times Do I Have to Say Goodbye," and I wrote that. I was probably in my mid-20s when I wrote it, and it was the whole the song was about that thing when you break up with somebody that you have to keep saying goodbye because of all the memories, painful things that come up, even maybe sometimes not painful things. But it's like, like, good Lord, how many times do I have to say goodbye? You know?
Yeah.
And but I actually, what was kind of cool about that song is that I loved it was a piano song, and it kind of it had it was a rhythmic, like a pop song, and I actually got to perform it after your mom won Nashville Star.
Oh wow.
We were on television being interviewed on Good Day Dallas. Yeah. And I was playing the piano, warm, because I was going to be accompanying your mom. Right. And playing. And so I was just noodling and warming up on the piano. And the producer came over to me and said, you sound great. Would you be interested in being on the show? And I was like, wow, really? Me? Yeah. So actually, so I performed for your mom, and then like 2 weeks later, they had us back, and your mom sang backup. Oh, awesome! On How Many Times Do I Have to Say Goodbye, and I got to be Billy Joel, dressed like him and everything, and that was my kind of my Billy Joel moment. But I don't know if you've ever experienced this where you wrote a song, and it just didn't really seem to get off the ground. No matter what you totally. Try, completely. And I kind of felt like my songs from
like a people hearing it standpoint, or from
writing it. Like, could this be something that would be commercial?
Oh, for sure,
marketable. Yeah,
all the time.
And then I just felt like there was something always lacking in the songs that I wrote, and probably because. There's very few people in today's music world, except for rappers, I think, where they'd write all their songs themselves. It seems they have a lot of co-writers.
Right, for sure. Like the hits are a collection of artists and songwriters. Yeah, like even the songs that go global hits.
Yeah, like even Elton John co-writes with Bernie Taupin. Yeah, of course Bernie's the lyricist, so that doesn't really count. But literally. Like some of the songs your mom recorded, like "What If It All Goes Right." "What If It All Goes Right" was written by two women. And there are songs that have 5-6 people on them. Some of them are there because they're riding the royalty train with them. But Billy Joel writes all of his own songs himself. I think that was sort of a rarity, which explains why he doesn't write a whole bunch. Yes. But I think that I was expecting it to kind of hit me like some kind of inspiration, and I would write a hit song without really understanding. Like I think you and Maverick understand that you have to work. You're actively working and editing and wouldn't that be true as your process?
I would say so. Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite inspirations is a guy named John Bellion, and he is an artist himself, but has written many, 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 many hit songs that people don't even know that he wrote. Right. People like, Rihanna's song, "I'm Friends with the Monster That's Under My Bed." You ever heard that song?
I think so. Yeah.
But he wrote that song for Rihanna, right? Like, so that's a huge hit, right? And it's one of those things that it's also, it kind of matters who the artist is that's singing it to a degree also, because had he gone and written that song and he released it himself, this is no offense to him because I'm one of his biggest fans.
Right.
But it just wouldn't have been maybe the global hit that it was.
Sure.
Had he done it as his song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And simply because Rihanna was the better fit for what, like, you know, and she was probably more famous than he was, I think, at the time when they were writing.
Yeah.
It, right. So
that's even a business decision.
You were right. But
Yeah.
The thing about my point with that is that it doesn't take away from the fact that John Bellion is a hit maker.
Right.
And he writes hits.
Yep.
And I think that, you know, personally, I've gone through phases where I definitely feel like it's hard to write. But lyricism for me, I feel blessed that has always been a natural gift for me.
Yes.
And it's almost like not just lyrics, but like melodies and like, you know, hooks and all those things I felt like came very naturally. And and I guess my different perspective, I guess, than yours for me when it came to making some of my songs that I felt like were really great was like I was really in my own world with it. Like I thought it was super cool. So
Right.
I was just happy with that. You know what I mean? But lately I'm beginning to develop a different ear where I can listen to my own songs on a objective, superficial level, and like in comparison to like, oh, this is what someone would be hearing in my music if they had never heard me before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what unlocked that point. Like, I guess just like separating myself, maybe distancing myself from the art for a while, like taking a break.
And how does that serve you? What does that do for you?
I think it serves me from a strategic standpoint in the sense that I would be lying if I said I'm not trying at points to write songs that are gonna like.
Right.
I can hear the thing that, oh, this is the mainstream-esque, or this is there's a tone, there's a sound, there's a melody that I think is, you know, captured in a lot of mainstream stuff, particularly through like my inspirations and people that I see in the industry that are doing really well. I look at what they're doing, and if something I'm doing like can emulate that, the part of that song that made it a hit or whatever, I typically try to lean in that direction. But it's also a fine line because I don't want to lose my authenticity in my writing either, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a balance, but I think, you know, that ultimately, like separating the, you know, the hit from the person who wrote it, you know, I think another thing I love about John Bellion is that, you know, he really considers his gifts a divine thing and kind of passes the glory back to God in that. And it's like he'll be like, oh yeah, I'll write it. I've written hits. But at the same time, there's a humility in it where he's like, but it's not, it's more like I'm getting out of God's way. Like God is
channeling what
God decided to gift me with these words, and I'm just trying to get out of his way to go create this thing that is going to be recognized by the world. And honestly, my dream is to have a similar impact. I would love to. My dream is at this point in life is to kind of be like John Bellion, where because he does his own music, he does his own artistry, he has his own fan base, but he's not like mega famous to the point that he can't like go and live some semblance of a normal life, right? There's kind of seems to be a balance. There seems to be a balance, but in the music world, like artists know who he is. Like he's really well known.
Right.
He's worked with the Jonas Brothers. He's worked with Pharrell. He's worked with like everybody you can think of. He's probably worked with, and so I think it's really awesome because his success is not defined by the amount of people that have recognized that he's a hit maker.
That reminds me of the woman that writes all the music for Celine Dion, Diane something. I can't remember her last name.
I don't know. Yeah,
but no one would recognize her. She looks like a soccer mom,
right?
You know,
and
she's a multi-millionaire. She wrote all the hits.
Yeah,
you know?
I used to want to be famous.
Yeah,
there was a time that I did want to be famous. Now it is like, you know, why would I want that? It's the attention. I'll never have any privacy.
We had a little taste of it, you know, on a local level. That I will tell you that sometimes it was annoying.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like
I'm
when,
sure.
when we would go in a restaurant in Arlington right after your mom won Nashville Star.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to go eat with, you know, wrestling all of our kids.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, can I get your autograph? You know?
Yeah. And I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and there is this part where you're like, oh wow, they want my art,
Yeah.
but there's this other part where you're just like, we're just trying to get in and out of here really quick, and and it's definitely, there's definitely a downside to fame.
Yeah. I want to ask you to get on the closing side, because we could talk for eternity. I think of an episode. I don't know how long we've even gone.
Oh wow.
But
I hadn't thought about that
for
either.
a minute. I want to ask you about your perspective of my journey. Like, what, I guess not just like as my dad, but also just as a person, like, what are your thoughts on, what I'm doing with music now, where I've kind of started?
Yeah.
What'd you think when I was first starting? Like, how has that evolved your perception of what I'm doing?
Oh, I know exactly what I thought. I mean, you were kind of an underdog from the beginning, as a rapper,
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. You didn't grow up in the bad part of town. You had we had
zero street cred. I had zero street cred. Negative street cred.
Yeah. And you also had this tremendous, and still do this tremendous idealistic energy, that initially would have been perceived as
delusional.
No, we might have had that word, but no, it was kind of like that it wasn't, like rappers are angry. They're
oh, right.
There's that this is like the layman sort of, they're angry, or they have a lot of angst about things, or you had a very sunny, thing about you. Okay. And also, like a lot of anybody doing musical things, you have to develop your skills, and you didn't come out of the box with skills. You definitely had all the raw materials to be able to write the words, and but even that, your lyricism has just evolved so incredibly. And then just, but you had to practice. You had to learn how to speed rap. You had to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
You
hundreds of takes, by the way. Like I used to practice rapping. It was genuinely.
I mean, you used to sound like me rapping.
Yes, literally. I sounded and I would get on the mic, and I mean, what now I can do in a one take. I would have to. It was a struggle. It would make me angry at times.
Yeah.
I would force myself to do hundreds of takes, like perfectionism,
But
it was insane, but it
that's
got
incredible.
me to where I am at today.
Yeah. So then, I think that, this idealism and ambition, and this, sort of a simplified approach to, well, when do I earn the good life kind of thing,
Yeah,
to
for
throw
sure.
back to the old thing, I think that you got the wake up call, you got slapped down.
I had my $7 moment.
Yeah.
For sure.
But you also had some really, and this is what, ask me what I'm thinking, as a parent, you kind of, when you have a kid that's trying to do something, you go, well, is this really realistic?
Right.
And because if it's really realistic, then I want to be encouraging.
Right.
But if it's not really realistic, then I want to maybe try to redirect.
Yeah.
Let's help you find whatever talent you have, welding, But you always had flashes of brilliance in everything that you were doing, that we could go, oh, what was that?
Right.
Can you do more of that? But we weren't saying that. We were just sitting back going, oh, wow. Okay. And then, but yet at the same time, because parents we're fear-based, we want our kids to be fine. Mom is saying, well, I don't know if you're a leading guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that came from her just not wanting you to be disappointed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not because she didn't believe you could be what you want to be, because we were always teaching you that.
Yes.
Right.
I think she knew how cutthroat the industry that I was trying to get into was going to be for me.
Look how she got burned, but we got burned by the record company and by the booking agency and by the industry.
But what she also didn't realize at that time was how thick my skin surprisingly was.
Yes.
And I think it was because of my complete ownership of. I knew that I wasn't the status quo for
Right.
rap.
You didn't let it.
I loved that I was different. I loved that I saw it as a strength, and I saw it as this is what makes me appeal to people.
And you didn't fixate on the ego part.
Right.
Like in other words, you got your ego tail feathers burned a little bit, but you were like, okay, I get it. Yeah. Let me work on it. Yeah. And you went all in and worked on it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, when I'm seeing, so then you built up this tremendous amount of effort and motivation and steam towards the Tulip Show. And, and I think that was the first time we all took you seriously. And we didn't know what was going to come of it or if anything would come of it. But we could see that, he's got the work ethic. And he can produce something that is for real, that audiences were responding, like looking around the audience.
Big thanks to Clayton. Shout out Clayton.
Yeah. But looking around,
I couldn't have done it by myself at that time either.
Yeah, looking around at the people listening to you, holding their phones up like they're recording a moment, And it was I've seen this moment when I watched your mom on her journey to Nashville Star.
Yeah.
I saw the way that people started responding. I was, wow, she's got what it takes to win a national contest and maybe go all the way, And so then you went through this developing part of going through the relationship stuff and disappointments and growing up and maturing and really and having deciding for yourself, man, I got to go get a job, and being willing to pay that kind of dues, not, and so you've come back to me, you're full circle back around to the Tulips time, but it feels different. Everything feels like we're on a different level at this time.
Yeah, it's really strange. Like the energy from the response of the crowd and the people that I'm talking to definitely feels different. And I don't know what it is, but I feel more empowered in who I am. I feel like I have more leverage.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I feel confident enough to be like, yeah, like I could go up to a venue and say, hey, can I play here? And they would say yes.
Yeah.
That's the first time. And by the way, this is a recent thing because for a long time, it was like, I'm not anything. It was a horrible, horrible low, depression, the self-confidence that I lost. It was awful, know, but lately, I don't know what it is, but I think just getting back into the scene, finding inspiration again, setting deadlines for myself and goals too that are kind of out of reach, like trying to hit 100,000 streams on this album, and those things fire me up to go and do at least try.
Yeah.
And I've noticed about myself, like once I'm out doing it, that's my favorite part.
Well, and
that's all I care about anyway. Yeah, I feel like I've already made it.
Yeah, and you notice that no one is saying you can't do 100,000 streams.
Yeah, you're right.
No one has said you're delusional.
Right, which is great. That's the other thing. Like, I think that's the other part. I've gotten to that point. The quality level is there that I didn't maybe have in the past.
If it happens, I won't be shocked at all. I'll be like, all right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, very much proud of what you're doing. Think you're on the right track 100%. I think, I'm personally interested in investing time and even money into what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I believe in what you're doing and I'm not delusional about it. If anything, like I said, as a parent who loves you, I would be, if I didn't think you could do it, I would be trying to help you deal with that reality.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, I would be disappointed if you weren't going all in to go after what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
So
and it's appreciated more than I can describe in words. I mean, being able to be here and like do this and take risks and try things, you know what I mean, and do podcasts and all these different things.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't wait to see where it goes because I know, I'm going to owe so much of it to you, Dad, like genuinely. Like I can't wait to see what happens and I appreciate all of your love and support and, it means the world. So
well, thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for being on the show. Guys, go follow my dad. Where can people find you, Dad? Let us know where you can find you.
I'm obviously on all the socials. You can find my Facebook is Rick Lawson Batman. That's a long story.
Yep.
The real Rick Lawson everywhere else, pretty much, Instagram, so on and so forth. I have a Facebook page called Man with Heart. I have a passion to help men in their, in the mid part of their lives, kind of pull themselves back together with their families and their marriages and being present fathers while they're on this entrepreneurial journey that I love being on, and finding just a way to stay positive. I'm definitely dialed in on getting myself even more fit. 20 pounds is great. I got another 15 to go. But, diet and exercise and just having a non-negotiable every single day, walking in the morning and in the evening, doing my resistance training. I want to be young. I'm very fortunate in that I have, 7 boys that I'm parenting, and I want to be healthy and energetic and around. I'm excited. One of the things that I'll say that is a big thing about being a man with heart is, to be 63 and have your 21-year-old son call you and say, "Hey, Dad, do you want to meet me at the gym and work out?" There's not a lot of 63-year-old guys that are getting that phone call from their dad. Or, even Har and Zayden, calling me and saying, "Hey, Dad, we're going to go have a drink. You want to have a drink with us?" I did not go. I wish I had gone, but
we're going to do it again.
But yeah, sure. But the point is, that's pretty amazing. There's a lot of guys that don't have that kind of relationship with their dad that they would think, let's call Dad and have him hang out with us, know? And so I'm humbled and I'm really grateful for that. But I also, I believe I'm intentional about this. Mm-hmm. I'm intentional about getting myself in shape. I'm intentional about figuring out how to make my business work the best that it can, and to be a great husband and a great dad as much as I can be. I'm always a work in progress, but I've learned a lot of things from the mistakes I've made in life, and so that's it.
To the viewers watching, genuinely, please go follow my dad. Not just saying this as his son, but genuinely, my dad has been a powerful force of optimism for me and a huge reason why I'm even doing what I'm doing today. Not just for giving me a place to live, but just the encouragement, the support. It's so evident in everything that you do and everything that you say. And next episode, we'll have to get into the Batman lore. So everybody, thank you so much for watching the Everything in Between podcast. This has been episode 4 with my dad, Rick Lawson. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. And it's because of y'all that we do this. So thank you for watching.